Delighted to have back on the show Ron DeSantis, one of our favorite people, Congressman for Florida's 6th District, candidate for U.S. Senate in 2016. Candidate DeSantis, Congressman DeSantis, welcome back.
Hey, good morning, Bill. How are you?
Good. Tell us about the Sunshine Seminar, if that's what it was called. We've been reading a lot about it. You were there and you spoke?
I did speak. So you had all the presidential candidates spoke. I spoke on Saturday morning, which basically meant I had to take the speech that I had planned and tear it up and focus on the threat that we face from militant Islam. And basically I took my time to just lay out, one, the president does not even identify the enemy properly, which you have to do in order to successfully combat the enemy. And then I just went through a series of things that, we in the Congress can affect right now. I mean, blocking his attempts to release terrorists from Gitmo, making sure that we're trying to push back on what he's doing with Iran, which does hurt our fight against ISIS to the extent that we're seen as being allied with them, and really take the threat seriously. And the unfortunate thing is after watching him the other day, I think if we're talking on January 20th, 2017, a lot of these problems are still going to be there, unfortunately.
Yeah, he was very defensive, very odd press conference. He talked about, what do you want me to do? I want to play a little audio for you, brief cuts, and get your reaction. This part really soured me. Go ahead, Claude, cut number 6.
Folks want to pop off and have opinions about what they think they would do. Present a specific plan. If they think that somehow their advisors are better than the chairman of my Joint Chiefs of Staff and the folks who are actually on the ground, I want to meet them. And we can have that debate. But what I'm not interested in doing is posing or pursuing some notion of American leadership or America winning or whatever other slogans they come up with.
Okay, enough. Such an odd thing, Ron. I'm not a shrink, but why caricature, America victorious or America winning? It just rubs us the wrong way. We actually like to think of America as victorious and winning.
Absolutely, and he said just the morning of the Paris attacks that ISIS was contained, and now we know even Russia is acknowledging that ISIS took down a civilian airliner, and then, of course, the atrocities committed in Paris. And he's also somebody, he talks about his advisors, but he's rejected military advice in the past, particularly with keeping troops in Iraq. So he is waging basically a political campaign. He wants to do the bare minimum to get himself through his term of office. He wants to be able to say that there's no other options. He's doing all he could. And another thing, too, is, he's the president of the United States. He's the one that's supposed to come up, with the best strategies and plans. We in the Congress, we can authorize force, we can, marshal resources and direct resources, but he ultimately is the one that's got to prosecute the case, and he's showing himself not willing to do so.
Yeah, failure of nerve, but certainly to a line of Justice Holmes, I fined my clerks $5 for failure of imagination. I mean, there are ways to think about this differently, right, than what he is doing. Charles Krauthammer, if you don't mind another clip, was talking about this yesterday. I'd love your reaction. You're a veteran, smart guy. Think about this. Play the Krauthammer cut.
It is not impossible, if the French are willing, if other NATO allies are willing, to have a force that is led by and includes the Turks, where you come in from the north. It's only about 80 miles to Raqqa. And Obama said, well, let's say I send the ground troops, 50,000. He pulled a number out of a hat. Be a lot less Americans. What do I do now? Occupy perpetually? Of course not. What you do with Jordan, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and Turkey, all Sunnis, 3 of them Arab, are the ones who would stay and occupy, not the United States. There is an answer. He just doesn't want to look at it.
There's an answer. He just doesn't want to look at it. Is that a plausible answer or something like that, Ron DeSantis?
I think it could be plausible. I think part of the problem with doing that is how the president has aligned us with the Shiites and with the militias outside of Baghdad fighting ISIS, that we've essentially done air cover for some of those militia groups. That makes it harder to get some of the Arabs in El Anbar province, where I served, who aren't necessarily supporters of ISIS, but they definitely do not want to live under an Iranian-dominated government in Baghdad. And so it makes it more difficult to marshal those forces. I think we have the ability to marshal the Kurds, although the administration still won't fund the Kurds directly and arm them directly, even though we've offered to provide that authority in the Congress. The president said he would veto the legislation. So I think it is doable. I think it's very unlikely, though, that this president would want to expend any capital in order to do so. I mean, you look at his press conference, he got much less upset at ISIS than he did at Republicans.
Yes,
I mean, that's really what he was upset about. And you think about that, you're just like, what kind of world is he living in that he gets so animated about his political opponents, but he's very subdued when you start talking about the threat of Islamist terror?
Tell us how to think about this, Congressman, because I'm sure you're getting questions on it as your Senate campaign gets going here. And that is, it's fair enough, it seems to me, for the president to say, okay, you don't like the way I'm doing it. Let's hear an alternative. There was an alternative we just played. But tell us how to think about alternatives. You have experience as a military guy. You're there in Congress. So how should we think about it? What might we do? What are the things we're not doing that we could be doing? Funding the Kurds, obviously, helping Peshmerga, obviously, but directly with ISIS.
Well, what we did when we had al-Qaeda in Iraq and western Iraq was partnered with the Sunni tribes and basically worked hand in hand with them to be able to drive al-Qaeda in Iraq out. Now, that's a much more difficult thing to do than what the president's doing, where he's flying a lot of missions. A lot of times they don't even drop ordnance, and so you're going to have to be more involved than you are right now, and he's not shown the willingness to want to do that. But that really, I mean, al-Qaeda had no place to go at that point once the tribal leaders were supportive of what we were trying to do. And that's my sense is, not having been back there in a while, my sense is that they're probably resigning themselves to supporting ISIS as kind of the path of least resistance. I don't think that that's their ideal. So I think there's ways that we would be able to work with some of the Sunni Arabs in the area. But that is really a key. You got to have Sunni Arabs partnering with you, because we can clear out ISIS, and we should do that. But ultimately, you want somebody to be able to hold that terrain who's not just going to allow ISIS or other like-minded jihadists to come back in afterwards.
If you were to make a short list of people President should be listening to or turning to or talking to, who would be on that list? He says all his closest advisors are saying, you're doing it exactly right. I don't believe that, as you pointed out. There's a fair amount of dissent. It also depends how you ask the question, right? I mean, he could say, we got to get rid of ISIS, guys. What do we do? I doubt if he's asking that.
No, yeah, I think he's trying to do, go through the motions, try to get the least consequential course of action so that he can say he's doing something. Look, we have a lot of retired flag and general officers who've been through these things. I think that we have them come testify on Capitol Hill all the time. And he should also talk to, it wouldn't hurt him to pick up the phone and talk to some senior Republicans who are involved with defense policy in the House and the Senate. And talk to them. Now, that's something he's loath to do, but he may actually learn something if he talks to some of these folks. Yeah.
Let's talk about the refugee crisis here in Florida, Refugee Central often. That's a place where a lot of refugees come, particularly from Central and South America. What is the feeling, what is your feeling about the Syrian refugees coming in? Looks like we got a pretty big political divide here.
Well, look, we cannot vet them, and the FBI has told us that. The State Department has admitted that under oath, and so I'm not going to be supporting a course of action if you're running the risk of bringing some of these ISIS folks into our country. And the fact of the matter is, if you bring in 10,000 people, even if it's only 1% that are bad apples, you're bringing in 100 terrorists, and that's potentially multiple terrorist attacks. And so, we have to err on the side of protecting the American people. And here's the thing, Bill. It's not a choice of either accept all these refugees or we're turning our back on people. You can help refugees in the theater of where they are and then return them back to their country once the fighting stops or there's some type of a resolution. They don't need to come to America to be given aid.
Right. There are other places they can go, right? It's not all filled up over there, right? right standing room only.
Oh no, and not in a lot of these Arab countries, they're not taking any of them.
Right.
And so, the notion that somehow we have to run risks to our security, that's just not something that's going to fly right now. And the refugees, but also how we do immigration writ large. I mean, the fact of the matter is, you have a lot of these homegrown terrorists in Western Europe that they have a passport, they can just hop on a flight and come here. They don't even need a visa because they're in visa waiver countries. That's a difficult issue. And then, of course, we have homegrown terrorism in our own country, and Europe has it worse than we do, but that is a very, very serious security threat.
We talked to Speaker Ryan yesterday and said, is there something that Congress can do about this funding, for example, to keep the president from doing it? Obviously, the federal government has authority here, but it requires money as well. He said that he was certainly looking into it. Do you have any sense of what's happening there?
Well, there's no doubt that we can, when the next round of government funding comes up, we can put in a provision to say, no funds for the refugee program. And I think we need to look at this program and take a pause anyways. And I've supported doing that. But there's absolutely nothing preventing us from doing that. And then he would have to decide, is he going to veto appropriations bills because it has that. I think most Americans are going to be with us. So he'd be running a significant political risk. But This is a guy that's pig-headed enough to want to do that.
Yeah. All right. Listen, we have to let you go. Thank you very, very much. We appreciate your being there, and we always appreciate you being here. But we're always happy you're where you are. And good luck in the Senate race.
Hey, thanks, Bill. Appreciate it.
Okay. Ron DeSantis, thank you.